Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, whatever that might be, and welcome back to another Stella Sora First Impressions video. Today we have the recently released Wraith, our first non-standard 5-star Vanguard VENTUS tracker. By the time of making of this video, Wraith has been out for 2 days, and I've been able to spend around 6 or 7 hours testing her builds and kit to see how she feels and how strong she is shaping up to be. And well, she's overall looking to be a pretty decent DPS. But before we get further into the video, let me warn you that an overwhelming majority of you watching this video are currently not subscribed. So if you want to help support the channel while also getting notified of whenever I post a new video, make sure to subscribe and leave a like as well. Also, I'm affiliated with Waifu Wears, a UK-based merchandising company where you can get a bunch of merch such as keycaps, cups, mousepads, and even TCG cards with all your favorite VTubers on them. And who knows, maybe me on them as well in the future. So make sure to check them out and use code RAYCON15 for 15% discount on checkout. Anyways, getting back into the video and Wraith's kit, which, by the way, this is a simple review and purely speculation of Wraith's strengths, and it's not intended to be a very strict guide, as there's simply not been enough time to make one. But Wraith's kit is one of the more interesting ones I've been able to test. She essentially has 2 play styles based on which range you prefer to play, being split between melee gameplay or ranged gameplay. As you can see, each one having its own scaling, which when you get into picking potentials, you end up picking which range you want to focus on and improve upon. Wraith's potential, I'd say, are the most gameplay warping that potentials have ever felt. Usually potentials change a bit of the playstyle, but not by much. Wraith's core potentials, however, are super playstyle changes. Let me show you. Her build 1 focuses on her melee range, which, after using your skill, makes her next melee auto attacks, and let it be specific, melee, causes her to spawn tornadoes that deal AoE damage, that triggers Ventus marks and tracks enemies down. Also, let me mention that her melee build is solely focused on auto attack damage. This build also includes potentials that block projectiles, which while using her skill, makes her feel extra safe. Then with her build 2, it focuses on her ranged auto attacks, which while using her skill, she creates lasers that targets ranged enemies that also trigger Ventus marks. So you essentially become a sniper spinning around, sending a bunch of lasers everywhere that scale off of skill damage specifically. As you can see from these 2 little showcases currently on screen, the gameplay looks completely different from one another, and that's something that, well, previously tried wasn't something that was too obvious, but Wraith's potential choices truly define her gameplay in a way that it's not really been done with previous trackers. And when it comes to her ultimate, it seems to be a solid set of damage, but I simply not have been able to maximize its usage due to it not being fully upgraded, because I've simply not had enough resources to do so. But overall, it seemingly has a strong scaling and a very wide range, so it's basically impossible to miss. It also has an alright energy cost, so you should have it a lot of the times. Overall, Wraith's strength-wise, so far as I can test and speculate, seems to be on the stronger side of the meta. I'd say she is closer to Xia and Fuyuka than she is closer to Fairen or Shitose. This is mostly due to having very strong scalings, which on my testing in boss splints, with not great emblems and not fully invested skill upgrades, I was getting around 55k with both builds. At first I actually expected the melee build to fully outshine the ranged one, but it's seeming with investment the ranged build might even be able to surpass it, but again, this is purely speculation and not confirmation of which build is the strongest one. And also, this was tested on a neutral boss that doesn't really buff Wraith. So numbers will vary the moment we get a boss blitz that benefits her. When it comes to what potential I was using for which build, I was doing these. For melee build, I was going Last Gasp of Gale, Twin Shadows, 0 Hour, Blade Waltz, Rapid Draw, Dauntless Poise, Tempest Stance, and if it's possible, I'd slot in Unseen Predator for the extra dash. Although I do see a build where instead of getting the extra dash, you go for Raging Battle Wheel for the extra attack percent after using the ultimate. Gameplay wise, I'd usually use all 3 skill charges at the start, and then I'd save 2 charges to always have a tornado on field. For ranged build, however, I was going Storm Piercing Surge, Wind Splitting Bullet, Trace Wind Blink, Overheat Shot, Scorching Gale, again Dauntless Poise, Tempest Stance. This time, however, I would prefer usually going for Raging Battle Wheel. Since you're playing range, you'll be less likely to be hit or chased down by the boss with multiple melee strings. When it comes to gameplay, I'd always use 3 skill charges and wait for Scorching Gale to at least have 6 stacks before spending the skill charges that I've regained. Be warned though, whenever you play this build, that it can be a bit janky if the content that you're facing always has enemies that stick close to you, because this can make you not be able to use your core potentials and ranged auto attacks correctly, so you always want to be as max range as possible to avoid this issue. Let's talk about her duplicates now, shall we? Talent 1, Daybreak Trigger, is a solid stat increase, giving almost purple skill damage emblem lines, and giving a bit more than a gold auto attack damage emblem line. Although overall benefiting the ranged build a bit more than the melee build, because skill damage is a bit harder to obtain over than auto attack. Talent 2, Righteous Judgment, is a weaker duplicate, giving her 2% attack whenever Wraith deals skill damage up to 10 stacks for 5 seconds. Which isn't really amazing, since it has a very low uptime, and attack percent can be an easy to obtain stat either way. Talent 3, Silver Phantom, is basically Talent 1, but instead of it being whenever Wraith triggers a Ventus mark, it's whenever a Ventus mark gets applied by a Ventus striker, giving once again 18% auto attack damage and 18% skill damage, once again benefiting the range build a bit more than the melee build, due to a skill damage being a bit harder to obtain. Talent 4, again, is like Talent 2, but instead of it being whenever she deals skill damage, it's whenever she deals auto attack damage, giving again 2% attack up to 10 stacks for 5 seconds. This one is a bit better than Talent 2, mostly because it's easier to maintain, but again, it's a simple attack percent buff, nothing too crazy to go for. Her Talent 5 and last one is the classic 24% increased damage to elite or higher tiered enemies. This is of course her strongest talent, and definitely her best one, but again, it doesn't change her gameplay, and it benefits both playstyles equally. Overall, her dips are nothing too crazy to get, but overall it's still nice bonus if you like Wraith and want a on-field strong Ventus DPS. One thing I will talk about in this video that I haven't really on other ones is Wraith's signature disc, Chronicles of Spring. And this is mostly because I usually don't get signature discs to be able to get more characters in general, but her signature disc looked pretty strong on text, so I got it. So essentially her disc applies debuffs depending on what you do. So after using a skill, you get a stack of drifting snow every 10 seconds up to 3 stacks total, which then whenever you deal auto attack damage or skill damage, you apply a damage taken debuff of the type of damage that you did. Auto attack damage going up to 18% and skill damage going up to 7.5%, each lasting 10 seconds. This is a pretty strong debuff because these debuffs are simply not very common, so they aren't as saturated, so they end up being more valuable. When it comes to the disc's extra harmony passives, they're also pretty strong. Vernal Zephyr gives a 6% Ventus damage to the whole squad, while also giving a 6% auto attack crit damage that stacks equal to your main passive stacks. So essentially an 18 auto attack crit damage. And for its last harmony skill passive, it's a simple 4% skill damage buff, which again stacks equally to your main passive stacks. So again, a simple 12% skill damage bonus, which is a bit more than a gold emblem skill damage line. So it essentially gives a bunch of stats that can be easily used by other Ventus strikers, for example Nanoha, since she also uses both auto attack and skill damage. So it makes it pretty valuable to have in general. And it seems like it's going to be a pattern for Ventus strikers to be both using skill and auto attack damage, so its value over time will be surely decent. Team wise, there's two main teams you can go with her. I won't go on the details for which potential each team can go, as I am still not very sure of them, because it's simply not been enough time and this is a simple first impressions video. The premium team being of course Mono Ventus with Wraith Vanguard, Nausicaa support and N support, focusing on buffing Wraith's damage in a hyper carry playstyle, in the sense that Wraith will be your main damage, so you end up focusing on debuffs and buffs for her. Then you have the free-to-play Mono Ventus team again with Wraith Vanguard, but instead of having Nausicaa, you have Canis support and then again N support. Again, this will focus on a hyper carry playstyle, however this team will feel a lot jankier because Canis support skill range is in a position where it feels a bit awkward for melee and ranged builds, because you have to be in a very specific range to make it work with either build, so it feels clunky. So if you can, do play Nausicaa over Canis if you can. Overall, Wraith is shaping up to a very strong Ventus tracker, blowing Nanoha out of the water by a mile, which, well, it wasn't exactly a hard thing to do, but it's still nice to see a character that feels very different from other characters when it comes to playstyle. My prediction when it comes to her place in the meta is that she'll be slightly behind Fuyuka and Shia power-wise, and this is without a full 5-star team, so she very much has room for improvement whenever a dedicated 5-star Ventus support comes out. But yeah, that is it for me today when it comes to Wraith's first impressions. What do you think about Wraith, and are you pulling for her? Make sure to tell me down in the comments below, if so. Also, make sure to tell me what you want to see next, and also leave a like to help spread the video to other players that might want to know a bit more about Wraith. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, hope you have a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, whatever that might be, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye!